Us, there's a sober lesson. I mean, I'm very thrilled and excited by the advances that we made in Chicago and in Seattle. But there's a sobering note that we have to strike on those points as well, which is this: that it seems to me that we have as yet been unable to replicate either of those actions. We are not yet in a position anywhere to take on a major metropolitan mayor and walk off the job with tremendous numbers and community support the way that they did in Chicago. We do not yet have that. Neither have we been able to find a test that an entire staff in a school finds so odious that they would be willing to boycott it, as the teachers at Garfield High, and then it spread to a few other schools. Now, I happen to know that other teachers have contacted me in New York who are beginning to have those discussions with their staff, like, could we, should we do something like that? That's amazing, and that wouldn't have happened without the Seattle map test boycott. But we still have not yet developed the organization, the infrastructure that will allow that to happen. And it seems to me that we have to take the word that we're using here, the word occupy, very seriously, and have in our minds that what we need going forward are not heroic individuals and superstars, but escalating collective actions. How can we act together in large numbers? And take a lesson from the Seattle action, because when you listen carefully to those teachers, they don't all agree that standardized testing is bad. They don't actually all agree with that. Some of them just thought that that test, the MAP test, is particularly bad, and it should be replaced with a better test, some of them say. But notice how the organizers, who definitely, people like Jesse Hagopian, who just called into you, definitely thinks that standardized testing is greatly misused and needs to be abolished and replaced with organic and authentic forms of assessment. So there's this difference, and yet the organizers were able to mobilize the whole staff. That should be a lesson to us, that even if all of our staff members are not there yet, and even for any kind of organizing, even if all the parents are not there yet, or all the students are not there yet, how can we find specific issues, specific aspects of this corporate education reform that stand out, that are particularly odious, that we can unite everybody in action around? And notice how once they took that action, it became a lightning rod for this sentiment all over the country. Now we're operating in a changed situation because of the Seattle map test boycott. I think there's a lesson in that for us. I think, let's go back to that analogy about Iraq. Yes, remember what happened in the initial days. All kinds of promises, weapons of mass destruction. We will be greeted as liberators, shock and awe. And if you just judge the results based on what happened in the first few days, well, then it's a wash. Wow, they bombed, they ran right in, nobody resisted them, and it was over. Except that the thing dragged on. And as it dragged on, a resistance emerged. Oh, and lo and behold, it turns out those people who had come in with all their tanks, with all their armies, with all their wealth, the mightiest military on earth, was weak. And actually it was weak for the simple reason that it was not actually there to liberate the people. And that meant that the more they stayed there, the more people got angry with them, and the more the resistance spread. And they whacked it down in one place, and it popped up somewhere else. We are in a situation like that. We are in the early days of a corporate assault that has dropped bombs and death and rained destruction and claimed victory and stood on ships declaring mission accomplished, and all kinds of bravura going on. Chest thumping and all of that. And then come to find out that actually they are not in the business of teaching and learning. Come to find out that they are not actually creating the excellence that they promised to so many people. And so we are in a situation that is potentially very explosive, where they have said, we're going to create all this disruption and mayhem for the kids. We're going to destroy their schools and rip up their relationships with the adults around them who care about them for years, for the kids. We're doing this for the kids. We're going to make profits and make sure everybody has an iPad, or everybody has some kind of a tablet that Rupert Murdoch has designed for the kids. They have made ridiculous promises that they cannot in a million years satisfy. And that will create more and more troops for our struggle if we have a side to join. And so we must begin and understand that, of course, we begin small. Honestly, when I showed up here, people were like, oh, but there were more people here yesterday. I don't care how many people are here. Everything starts small. I really don't care.
Right. That's right.
You know what? The Chicago Teachers Union strike flashed back 3 years, and there's 8 people studying Naomi Klein's book, The Shock Doctrine. Everything starts somewhere. Everything starts somewhere. I'm happy to start wherever, with whomever wants to start. And we have to have that attitude as well and go forward. The danger is that we go forward and we don't bring people with us. So we have to have an attitude like we're all going to go forward together, or we're not going forward just yet. See, I want us one day to come back here in this place and take this occupation indoors and occupy the Department of Education. Now look, if we're not all ready to do that, then we don't have to do that just yet, but we have to have the idea that that's the kinds of thing we're trying to do. Ultimately, this is going to have to be a struggle to save our schools, and ultimately we're going to have to occupy schools to stop them from closing them. It's going to come to that. It has to. I'm going to leave you with a quote that I was thinking about on my way here. I'll leave it to you to divine the tremendous irony of me reading this out on an iPhone. This is a quote from the escaped slave and brilliant abolitionist Frederick Douglass talking about how do you fight and win reforms. He says, "Let me give you a word of the philosophy of reform." This is Frederick Douglass. "The whole history of the progress of human liberty shows that all concessions yet made to her august claims have been born of earnest struggle. The conflict has been exciting, agitating, all-absorbing, and for the time being, putting all other tumults to silence. It must do this, or it does nothing. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or maybe a physical one, or maybe both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found," think about our education struggle, listen to this. "Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows, or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress." We are here to plow up the ground, to bring the thunder and the lightning, and I'm honored to be among you. Thank you.